Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. I apologize for my voice, but we're going to push through this. I am Audrey Holtzman, the Diversity and Inclusion Program Manager with LifeCenter Organ Donor Network, short LifeCenter. And tonight we are hosting this webinar to talk about multi-religious perspective on organ and tissue donation. For those of you who are not familiar with LifeCenter, LifeCenter is the organization that facilitates and encourages the donation of human organs and tissues for transplantation as an institutional member of the United Network of Organ Sharing, also known as UNOS. We follow all UNOS guidelines. We are in 16 counties throughout this tri-state area. That is our designated service area. Through Southwest Ohio, Northern Kentucky, and Southeast Indiana. We also work with 46 facilities to make organ, eye, and tissue donation happen. And so we are honored to host this webinar tonight to showcase what we do in the community as it pertains to organ and tissue donation. We also want to dispel a lot of the misconceptions around religious beliefs and organ and tissue donation. And so we are showcasing 5 fantastic faith leaders tonight who will share their perspectives on organ and tissue donation to help dispel a lot of those misconceptions. So feel free to ask questions in the Q&A and we will make sure to answer those. And so now I am going to introduce our panel. We have Rabbi Elena Stein. We also have Aruni Marapane, who is a Buddhist chaplain, Pastor KZ Smith from Corinthian Baptist Church, Imam Hossam Musa from the Islamic Center of Greater Cincinnati, and Brandon Jones, who is the first counselor of the Cincinnati, Ohio stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so kicking us off today is going to be Rabbi Stein.
Well, in Judaism, saving life is a very fundamental value, and that value of saving life is greater than the rules of the Sabbath, greater than the rules of modifying bodies or tampering with dead bodies, and greater than the rules about burying immediately, which are important Jewish rules. So organ donation is a part of Jewish tradition for all flavors of Judaism, but it's important to know that organs can be removed from a Jewish donor only if death has been confirmed. For some Jews, death can be confirmed by neurological criteria, which is like a brainstem death. And for other Jews, it's from circulatory criteria, so when the heart stops. And of course, organ donation is not required. It's a very personal decision. So for Jews, it's important, if you're Jewish, to have advance directives that include some kind of statement that says whether you go by neurological criteria or circulatory criteria. And if you have a rabbi or a Jewish organization that will be advising your decision maker about those things, you should be sure that that person's name is listed in the advance directives. And then for care providers like doctors or LifeCenter, you want to be able to include that rabbi or person or organization in your conversations with the family, and also try to limit your conversations with the family and that one rabbi. This sort of avoids telephone game where you say something to one person and then they tell their rabbi and he or she hears something else. And it also avoids situations where multiple family members might each have a different rabbi, and then there's a lot of unclarity about who should be advising the decision maker. But in short, Judaism does support organ donation, and it's a matter of making sure that death has been confirmed before that process can proceed.
Thank you so much for that. And so next, we are going to hear from Aruni Marapane, our Buddhist chaplain, about her perspective, her religious perspective on organ and tissue donation.
Hello. I'm Aruni. I'm a Buddhist chaplain. So freedom of thinking is the key to Buddhist thinking, Buddhist teachings. Therefore, there are no specific restrictions in Buddhism about organ donations. I will be speaking not only about this part of the world. I am originally from Sri Lanka, so that's Southeast Asia. I'm going to talk to you all about across the globe. So anywhere in the Buddhist world, there are no specific restrictions. There are some lineages like Tibetan Buddhism, little bit more restrict about when is the consciousness leaves the body. So they would want the body is not to be disturbed for a few days. So other than that, generally across the Buddhist world, there are no specific restrictions. In Buddhism, the death process of an individual is extremely sacred and important, and it should be treated with greatest care and respect. More than the birth, the most sacred moment of a Buddhist person's life is the crossing over moment. Because in Buddhist teachings, we believe in a long journey, and we believe in rebirth, not reincarnation, rebirth, becoming, endless becoming, and the information we collect through our senses in this birth is the one's going to go to the next life. So the last moment is very crucial. The last moment is the one that's going to decide what kind of form the being's going to take. So I'm a Buddhist chaplain, so I do have lots of experience, first-hand experience about how various belief systems react to these organ donations. And therefore, I do have first-hand information about many reactions of different kind of patients. And there were some sacred moments that I was actually 2 times, I was allowed to be with the request, because of the request of the family, where the harvesting was done. In that room, continuously praying while the harvesting was done. So it was this platform is extremely sacred to me. So as for Buddhist teachings are considered, I would like to describe 3 significant practices: generosity, morality, and meditation. So the most important key practice, more than anything, more than even deep meditations we talk about, the first practice is generosity. So these are extremely vital to Buddhist spiritual practices. Generosity, which would be offered without expectations of return or attachment to the giving or given. This practice frees the mind from clinging to the notion of permanence, yet give wisdom to understand the transient nature of all phenomena, rejoice the act of giving, understand the power of interconnectedness and interdependence of nature, and finally, heartful of compassion and loving kindness remain. Generosity can happen in many ways: spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Organ and tissue donation happens in Buddhist perspective in every possible way. So even though organs are physical part of the body, the act of organ donation is a wholesome act, because it has that all aspect of emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, socially, all aspects are there in organ donations. So promoting and encouraging donating body parts to the benefit of the other while living and after the death without limitations, very, very important. So the most generous act in Buddhist perspective is when you are donating organs while you are living, because that's the hardest thing to do, because that takes a lot of strength, courage, and of course, a lot of detachment. So in Buddhist world, there's no restrictions again, but while living, giving the body parts are extremely, extremely sacred. So finally, in Buddhist world, in Buddhist teachings, Buddha said, when one donate organs to the other with absolute love and compassion, it is considered the highest generous act one can perform towards the healing of the other's well-being. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And next, we will move on to Pastor KZ Smith from Corinthian Baptist Church.
All right, bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that's within me. Bless his holy name. To LifeCenter, the organ donations, and to all the panelists, and to all of you who's on this webinar. Again, I'm KZ Smith, Corinthian Baptist Church. I guess I'm here to represent the Christian point of view as it relates to organ donation. And because the Bible doesn't specifically say anything about organ donations, we have Christians on both sides of this issue. Some Christians believe that we really shouldn't make organ donations. They think it's a way of mutilating the body or disrespecting the body, and also thinking that when we get to heaven, we want to have all the body parts we had when we were down here on earth. But the Bible, which is our book for living, and the Bible teaches that the Lord's going to give us a new body, and so we want a better body in eternity. But I'm on the side to believe that organ donation is very important and very much needed, and I really applaud the work that LifeCenter is doing. And one reason is because even though the Bible doesn't specifically say whether we should do it or don't do it, or whether it's good or bad, but there are passages in the Bible, I think, that pretty well encourages us to help our neighbor. And for instance, in the Old Testament, in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 16, it tells us in so many words, don't just stand around idly when your neighbor's life is in danger. In other words, the Lord is requiring us to be able to help our neighbor, especially to save our neighbor's life. And so organ donation not only changes the quality of life, but it can also save a life. And I think that's something that the Lord requires of us. And also in what we call the golden rule in Matthew 7, it says, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. And so, if I need an organ donation, or my spouse or my children or my grandchildren, especially if it's to save my life and, vastly change the quality of my life, I would really be praying for an organ donation. I would really be praying that someone would donate an organ to me. And so, and I would want the same thing for my children. And so if I want it, then I know someone else wants the same thing as well. And as the Bible says, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. So the thing that we would want, our neighbors also want. And so I believe that, again, the Lord requires of us to love him with all of our heart, but also to love our neighbors as ourselves. And so even though the Bible doesn't specifically say that we should or shouldn't, I believe organ donation is a great act of love, a great act of generosity, as I heard my sister say, a great act of generosity that we can give to our loved ones, to our neighbors, and even to maybe people we don't even know. As the Bible talks, the question was asked, who is my neighbor? And basically Jesus went on to say, well, our neighbor is the person that we see that's in need. And so again, I think organ donation really allows us to do this. And I just want to also go on to say, I think, oftentimes, when you're at the hospital and your loved one just have passed away and they haven't really made a decision about organ donation, I think it's kind of difficult for the family right then to say, yes, you can take their eyes or take the heart or whatever. And so therefore, I believe, we need to do this early on, when we know that it's important, do it before, tragedy strikes, do it so that we can be able to help someone and it doesn't become a difficult decision. I was at a hospital and a mother, her baby had just died, and they came in, they wanted to take the baby's eyes. And that was, just a difficult time right then to ask for that. And so again, those kind of things really should be decided before really tragedy or something fatal has taken place. But again, I greatly support organ donations.
Thank you. Thank you. And next, we will move on to Imam Musa from ICGC, and we will hear his perspective from the Muslim point of view.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I greet you with the official God-gifted greeting from the Holy Quran, and it is may peace, blessings, and compassion of God Almighty be unto all of you. Good evening, esteemed panelists, leaders, and faith leaders. May God Almighty bless each and every one of you. I'd like to begin in the name of God, praising him, the most compassionate, the most merciful, and send salutations upon all prophets and messengers of God, concluding with Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, his family, companions, followers, and upon all of us. That being said, I thank you for conducting this beautiful panel, and I will share with you the Islamic perspective on organ donation. For starters, I'd like to say that this is a matter of difference of opinion in Islam. But many scholarly bodies have decided that this is something that's extremely noble and extremely and generously rewarded by God Almighty, which I also personally prescribe to and support. And the verse in the Holy Quran that refers to this in general is وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. And one who saves a life is as if they have saved all of humanity. So therefore, saving one single soul in any way possible, God rewards that person with the reward as if they have saved all of humanity. And with regards to organ and tissue donation in Islam, there are two types of donations: a donor that's living and a donor that has passed away. For the living donor, we have some conditions. Those conditions are that it is a donation, not a sale. The second condition is that the organs that are donated or tissues are not reproductive. So you can donate any of the other organs that are non-reproductive organs, non-sexual organs. And the last condition is that whatever you donate cannot end your life as the cause of the donation, and cannot have a majorly adverse effect on your health. Of course, that is determined by the healthcare professional as well as the person deciding together. So these are some of the conditions with regards to a living donor. Number one, it is not a sale, it is actually a donation. Number two, it is a tissue or an organ that is not a reproductive organ or a sexual organ. And number three, donating that part will not end the donor's life, nor will it have a major adverse effect on the quality of life that they will live. And that is obviously determined by the professionals in the field. The donors that have passed away, they can donate any body part with the exception of reproductive and sexual organs. And it also has the condition of non-sale, so it cannot be sold, it needs to be donated. These are some of the conditions for the donors that are donating after they have passed away. In Islam, it is extremely encouraged to support life. It is one of the 5 objectives of the Islamic Sharia, the laws of Islam, is to support and protect as well as preserve life. The donor, the Muslim donor in this case, can donate to any human being, Muslim or non-Muslim, any gender, male or female, and also a Muslim recipient can receive from any person of any faith or no faith, male or female. I hope this gives a little glimpse from the Islamic perspective with regards to organ and tissue donation. And I personally would like to express my deep gratitude to LifeCenter for the amazing work that they do. And I'm honored to support your work in any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And then rounding us off is Brandon Jones. We will hear his perspective on organ and tissue donation. And then we will move on to Q&A. And so if you have any questions, please go ahead and start putting them in the Q&A, and we will get to them after Brandon is finished.
Thank you, Audrey. I'm here representing the Cincinnati, Ohio stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I'm very pleased to be able to join this evening's event and panel alongside so many other esteemed men and women of great faith, and appreciate the wisdom and inspired words that they've shared. I thought I'd begin by sharing my faith's official policy with respect to organ donation. We believe that the donation of organs and tissues is a selfless act that often results in great benefit to individuals with medical conditions. Therefore, organ donation is fully within the faith, and there is no need to be concerned about one's spiritual standing as a result of the decision to donate organs. The decision of a living person to donate an organ to another or to receive a donated organ should be made with competent medical counsel and prayerful consideration. We're grateful for the opportunity for there to be living donations and view that as a blessing, one that should be made with a doctor and with prayerful consideration so that the will of the Lord can be made known. And lastly, the decision to authorize a transplant of organs or tissue from a deceased person is made by the person or his or her family. We believe that agency is incredibly important in our faith. The decision always should come from the individual or family. But again, that great blessings come to those that make that loving and kind decision to donate. As I think about this, I like to look to individuals that I trust for their examples with respect to organ donation. I thought I'd share that in our faith, we have a tradition of lay ministry, meaning that those in leadership earn our living outside of the faith in normal professions and occupations. Our current global leader, Russell M. Nelson, is actually a former cardiothoracic surgeon who helped pioneer a number of surgical techniques for open heart surgery and was part of a group of doctors in Minneapolis in the early 50s that worked to develop the first artificial heart-lung machine, which keeps a patient's blood and oxygen circulating during open heart surgery. Those tools represent a foundation still used today in medical science to make certain classes of organ donation a possibility. And I love the thought that our leader has been someone that helped make this possible. I certainly trust him and know that in his wisdom, he is setting an example of how God and Jesus Christ feel about organ donation. I also look to the Savior Jesus Christ, who came to sacrifice his life for all of us. There is no greater love than to lay down your life for your friends and those you love, and he certainly set that wonderful example. He was a master healer, and I think part of what we can take from him is his example. We have the opportunity to do our best to live like he did, knowing that we're imperfect and not deity like he was, but nonetheless, if we try and emulate the way that he lived, we are blessed for that. And I love that in giving up everything he had, he brought life unto all of us, spiritual life and resurrection and rebirth. Giving of organs allows us to be a little bit like him in giving that same gift of life to our friends and to others, perhaps strangers, but nonetheless, brothers and sisters in God. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for those that are willing to donate organs. And I view it as something that is truly honored and blessed of the Lord, a great gift and one that really can make a difference. So I thank all those that are participating in this panel and LifeCenter for hosting us and for talking about this wonderful opportunity and blessing.
Thank you, Brandon. And thank you all to all the panelists. We're now going to move to our question and answer session. And we have one here in the Q&A. And it says, first of all, thanking you all for being here. And it says, I'm curious, when members of your congregations have questions or even present misconceptions to you about organ donation, how might you advise them on the issue? And what kinds of misconceptions have you heard in your roles? And I'll let whoever wants to go first take that.
And start us off, since I started us off before. I do think that many Jews are under the misconception that organ donation is not possible. And I think that's because two reasons. We've been so strongly taught that you shouldn't mutilate your body, and certainly a dead body. However, as I say, among all the flavors of Judaism, organ donation is acceptable. And it's because of that value of saving life, that there are just so many. First of all, I didn't mention before, I sort of had assumed we were talking about end of life organ donation, but certainly if a person's living and will continue to live after donating an organ, that's for the Jewish community, that's very common. People are very aware of that. But organ donation at end of life, many Jews are not aware because of this strong belief about not desecrating the body. But as I say, the belief in saving life supersedes that. And I'll also say that there's also in the Jewish community, I think many Jews don't know what they believe because we've been so displaced. Our schools of learning during World War II, the centers of Jewish life, the schools, everything was kind of displaced. And so being in the United States, for sure, there isn't, the schools of learning are still being rebuilt, and the communities are still being rebuilt. And with that displacement, a lot of education was lost. And with being a part of American society, there's a lot of secularization taking place and a lot of assimilation. So I think that's another thing, is that many Jews don't know what we believe because of that displacement and that lack of education and that sense of assimilation. But kind of, I do pretty much say to people, first and foremost, that, it is something that they have to decide personally for themselves, in consult with their conscience and with their religious teacher and leader, because it's not something that should or must be forced. However, again, I think many Jews are aware, if they're aware, even if they're not very educated about Judaism, that life is a very strong principle in Judaism and that life is very important. And then also, I think just the complexities of brainstem death versus the heart death, that people may not be aware of that until they reach that point. So I think someone earlier had said about the importance about talking about these things before the time comes. I think that's very important, that people become aware and knowledgeable about LifeCenter, talk with their families about what they believe. In Judaism, death is a part of life. There's really no reason to not talk with your family about what your end of life wishes are. It's a very important gift to give your family, to have those conversations with them. And so that's a big thing I would encourage people in my own community, is to have those conversations while you're living, while you can express who you would want to help advise in those situations, while you can talk about what you value and the aspects of the Jewish tradition are important to you. That's a great gift to a family, so that when they're in that situation, they know that they're fulfilling your wishes for your Jewish future and your Jewish eternity. Yeah.
I guess I can piggyback. Definitely agree with everything that the rabbi has said. And I think especially in the Black community, we don't talk enough about organ donation. And so therefore it allows a whole lot of misconceptions to be out there, because we never really talk about it, never really address it. As the old saying goes, if we knew better, we would do better. And so because we don't know, we think it's something that we really should not do. And again, to see, if I could just say, Audrey, a Black woman out there talking about organ donations, that is something that is, different to me to see this. But I'm glad that it's being done, because more of it needs to be done, I know, in our community.
Hello. So I will go next. Yeah. So this is a quite different perspective, I guess, from the Buddhist community. So Buddha's been gone for 2,600 years. I can vouch you. This is in our DNA. I can speak for the whole Buddhist community in the whole world. This is simple, and there's no hesitant. And I'm sure there are individuals who here and there doesn't want to do that. Even if you do or not, it is an accepted fact, because as Buddhist practitioners and Buddhist people, we know about impermanence and importance of detachment and nothing but letting go. And letting go doesn't have a limitation. Letting go of mind, thoughts, perceptions, perspectives, dogmas, emotions, and of course, everything physical need we concentrate and thought in order to reach the liberation of that pure mind. So letting go, and letting go of the body, the organs, it's very accepted. As I said, it's in Buddhist people's DNA, I guess. So I don't come across much from our congregations or communities here, neither back home, any resistance. It's pretty much accepted. It's a wonderful, meritorious act, and it's just let it go. Just let it go. But people would do that. Well, it's an individual choice, depending on circumstances and the individual conditions. But pretty much, as I said, whether people do it or not, in their core, they know this is something unbelievably sacred, and it's pretty much okay. It's part of our life.
If I may chime in, thank you, esteemed panelists, and thank you, Pastor Smith, for saying we need to do more, and that's always the case, and I definitely concur with you. And thank you, Audrey, for opening my eyes to a lot of the details in the process of organ donation. And since meeting you a few years back, this is my third program, I believe, with LifeCenter. And we've begun a very healthy educational program and process with our Muslim community here at the Islamic Center of Greater Cincinnati. But I will dive into the possible debate in the Muslim community or Muslim world between those who are of the school of thought or argue that organ donation is not something they prescribe to, and those who actually have responded to them. And let me first say that Islam gives a very ample space in conducting rich and deep discussions with regards to topics such as this, since it's more contemporary than many think. But let me give you a little perspective from the Islamic faith and argument. So the possible folks that will say they're not for the organ donations, they're going to say the body, or they say the body, and I'm simplifying very much so for the sake of time, the body is a sacred gift from God, therefore it doesn't belong to you, and therefore you can't do with it as you wish. That's the argument, how it's laid. The scholars, and these are scholars from both sides, and the scholars who've responded to that have said, well, the body is a gift from God, and yet God tells us as to give from that body, and we have, and including some of the many other gifts, and starting with breast milk, for instance, that is from the mother's body, and therefore it is given to another body. The second is blood donation. There isn't a single Muslim that I've come across that prohibits blood donation. As a matter of fact, it's all encouraged, especially with what's going on in the world. Our prayers and hearts go out to our brothers and sisters afflicted in Morocco, and the 10,000 plus bodies that are missing from the flash flooding and tsunami like events in Libya and many other places all over the world. But that being said, blood is part of the human body, and yet in Islam, we are encouraged to donate blood. Thirdly is wealth. God says in the Holy Quran, وَآتُوهُم مِّن مَالِ اللَّهِ الَّذِي آتَاكُمْ, and give them, that is those who are in need, from God's wealth which he has provided you with. So God refers to the wealth that we all possess is that it is from God, and it does belong to God ultimately. Yet he tells us to give from it. Therefore, based on those three examples, we have evidence in the Islamic faith to give from our bodies to those who are in need, as well as our wealth, from the wealth that ultimately belongs to God, that he has provided us with or entrusted us with to actually give to others. So this is just a small dive into the discussion, rich and deep discussion between two opinions in the Islamic faith. And I encourage any Muslim to understand and respect the difference of opinion, but many scholarly bodies, including personally myself, I prescribe to the opinion and lean towards the opinion that encourages organ and tissue donation with the Islamic guidelines that I've shared earlier.
I'll just add that I think it's wonderful when congregants come and ask questions about organ donation and want to understand better the faith that they're a part of and the beliefs that they have. It means that they've been prompted by God to ask those questions, and it's a beautiful opportunity to counsel with them about the great love and joy and blessing that can come from such a wonderful gift as organ donation. It's certainly understandable that there may be confusion because our sacred texts, the scriptures, were written in a day when modern medical science didn't make this possible. And so you're, of course, not going to find direct mention there about organ donation. But I think the patterns, nonetheless, can be discerned about service and giving of our substance and our means to the benefit of our fellow men. And so certainly in opportunities to counsel with people, those are things that we share with them. Share the view that we have been asked to wear out our lives in the service of our God. And when we successfully do that and come to perhaps the end of our life, there is another meaningful gift that we can make in giving of the body that, again, I think Imam Musa appropriately pointed out is not ours, belongs to God, but that is joyful for him when we do give of that to others so that their lives can be preserved and prolonged. So it's a beautiful opportunity when people are facing those things to share what we know to be true about that selfless gift and help them feel more comfortable and peaceful about organ donation.
And if I may add just a small addition is that if someone may ask why in Islam reproductive organs are prohibited from donating or donation, that is because lineage in Islam is extremely important. And lineage meaning people need to know who their parents are, who their siblings are, who their children are. And therefore, to avoid incest, to avoid potential mistakes where someone in some part of the world ends up marrying or and so forth with someone that they shouldn't marry. So this is why it's very important to make sure that everyone knows who their biological parents are and children are to avoid any potential incest. Thank you.
Thank you all for those awesome answers. And we're going to move on to another question that actually comes from our team at LifeCenter, our family service coordinator team. That team works with and walks with our families who their loved one have the potential to be organ and tissue donors, and just supporting them and helping them through that process. And so this question says, what are the best ways to provide support to individuals who have lost a loved one if they are part of your faith community? What can we be doing? What can we do more? How can we be more sensitive to each of your religion to help walk those families through this process?
Audrey, I think the men and women that you have at LifeCenter are remarkable because those really are challenging and trying times as people are dealing with the loss of a loved one and not being able to be in contact with them on a daily basis and mourning that change in their circumstance. And so those conversations really are difficult and challenging. I think it's an opportunity, again, to reassure people about the beauty that comes from giving this gift of life to others by donating organs, reassuring them that that individual lives on in, of course, their family members' hearts and memories in a figurative sense, but that, again, it can be a very literal thing too. And that is something that's beautiful, and I think is wonderful when those at LifeCenter can share that perspective as well. Help just people understand that it is something that is a service and a sacrifice, to be sure, but one that for which their God will honor them if they choose that path, and that they can feel that love from God when they make that decision.
And Audrey, is the question about organ donation when someone loses a loved one? What can we do to help? I was trying to understand the question.
Yes. So oftentimes we come across families who, have a hard time reckoning with losing a loved one, and then also coming to grips with the fact that that loved one can be an organ or tissue donor and help save a life. And so we usually will rely on our faith leaders in the community to help support us through that process, or help support that family, or even the chaplains in the hospitals where we work. And so that question is, what more could we be doing as a team to help support our families from each of your religious perspective?
Yeah, again, I think just getting the word out, because when that time comes, it's really difficult to really, I think, get through to the families, but to be there to show that you love them, that you're praying for them, that you care. Oftentimes when I'm at a hospital and that question comes up, should they make a donation, they'll ask me, and I'll basically, tell them what I believe, but also say, it's a family decision. So it's not really my decision. It's a family decision. I tell them, I don't think there's anything wrong. Just like organ donation, sometimes they talk about being cremated. Is it okay for me to be cremated? And it's, again, from a Christian standpoint, we believe that, the body is a place where the soul lives. And so the real person is the soul. And so for the, you could be cremated in a car accident, or in a house fire, in a plane crash, whatever. And so the body, again, is not really who we are. And so again, but we do our best to take care of our bodies. We do our best to respect our bodies, because we believe it's the temple of God. But again, those kind of things really need to be talked about before that time comes, so that when it comes, we're more able to receive someone saying, I think an organ donation would be something that would really help someone. But to really hit them cold right there at the hospital, and they really haven't thought about it earlier, is very difficult.
I'd like to say that I think for the Jewish community, there's proactive and presence. And the proactive, of course, there are many Jewish organ donor organizations that specifically have materials, including, like good sermon outlines. And then I know sometimes there's organ donor awareness week or month. And so if proactively relationships and connections can be fostered with Jewish organizations and synagogues, so that, a specifically Jewish panel might happen in a congregation as part of a program, or there might be a Sabbath where organ donation is celebrated and recognized, and everything from providing advance directives to people in the community that would say what their rabbi would recommend, it says in the advance directives. So those kinds of things can be done proactively. And then in terms of presence, this is something that I just in 20 years of working in a hospital, LifeCenter just does so well, which is just being there for people at that difficult time. Not pressuring them, which I think can be a hard thing to do when you know the good that can come of it, but recognizing that it is really tough and being there for that family. I think something that I would want Jewish families to know is that our gifts and our legacy, that's something very important to the Jewish community after someone dies. So for example, it's not customary to give flowers in a Jewish community when someone dies. It's customary to make donations to charitable organizations. That is to your loved one's merit. That is something that helps them through eternity and helps your family honor what was important to them. And I do believe that organ donation is an extension of that. So when a Jewish family, assuming that the criteria have been met for them, can realize that the life and death is out of their hands, that is in God's hands. Sometimes people of all faiths I've found feel like they're playing God by making a decision at end of life, but you can't play God. Only God is God. But what you can do with organ donation is ensure this legacy and the saving of life and helping to honor your loved one, in terms of helping others in the future, which is a very Jewish value for us. And I know for many other communities as well.
Yeah. So, what I did was, for me as a chaplain, practically, when families approach me and ask me, what do they do? And they're confused, should I make the decision? My whole approach was how practical this is, because this decision needs to be done very quickly. You don't keep a body for 6 months in a freezer, and you know that, Audrey, right? And until the family makes up their mind, this is a very quick decision, relatively, needs to be done. For example, a real life experience, there was a 23-year-old man, Hispanic man, was shot dead where I live, and I was there in the hospital, and then he was a prime candidate for organ harvest. And the LifeCenter was there, and the family was approached, and they were in such a chaotic situation, because he's 23, he's your only son, and he's been shot to death, and the family has to deal with so much chaos and trauma at the same time. Here comes another one. Would you consider donation? This organ donation. So this is difficult. All I did was listening and try my best to have, even though it's quick, to get into their hearts and try to understand their way of looking at this whole situation. Sometimes it was successful, and sometimes it's not. I was just dumbfounded. I was just holding them and crying with them. But slowly, there were times that I was able to approach and get into their heart and understand their pain and sorrow, yet slowly give them strength and courage, and slowly helping them to make that decision. It's okay. Let's look into this. That's how I did.
Yeah, with this regard, I would say the proactive approach, so people can make their decisions on their own, and you are actually spared this predicament of should or shouldn't you do donate. So that decision is made by the individual in their lifetime, when or if the time comes and they're able to gift the gift of life. Secondly, if it's the family and the decision is already made, but they're just having a hard time dealing with the death and departure of their loved one, then some of the things that bring some solace is reciting the verse that I mentioned, and one who saves a life is as if they have saved all of humanity. That gives some sort of comfort to the family, knowing that the extreme generosity of their loved one, and the even more infinitely extreme generosity of God Almighty for gifting them, for saving one life. He gifts them the gift and reward of as if they have saved all of the human lives. Additionally, we also have in our faith tradition that Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, explained when a person dies, their good deeds or deeds cease to continue to be deposited in their account, with the exception of three ways, one of which is an ongoing charity, beneficial knowledge that others will benefit from after obviously their departure, and thirdly, a righteous offspring that prays for them. All of those will be continuous rewards that God will have be deposited in their accounts post departure from this world, post death. And therefore, an ongoing charity of this, we always sometimes assume that the ongoing charity is limited to wealth, to money. And that is obviously true, that it could be money that you have put in an orphanage or some sort of water well or school or mosque, and others will come and benefit from that charity onwards after your departure, but also that organ that you've given somebody and all the good that individual that you've saved or supported or improved their life with that organ, you are also rewarded tremendously for the good that comes out of that, let alone already saving the life regardless of what deeds that individual does. So these sometimes can be supportive to the family and help bring some form of solace to them. And lastly, I would say use us as resources. You can use me as Imam for any Muslim donor or family that needs my support in any way possible. And I think these educational programs proactively highlight and celebrate as well as appreciate such generous donations.
All right. So we have another question, and a lot of you have kind of segued into it already. But this one says, you are all such beautiful speakers on organ donation. Have you previously incorporated, or would you consider incorporating, discussing organ donation when delivering your sermons? And I do know the answer for some of you because I know you have already.
Yes, most definitely. Again, the more we can get the word out, the better it is, especially like Musa, if I could say it in Arabic, but that would really be great. If I can get up and do a sermon, man, I love to hear him speak that. If I can do that, I get a couple of hundred people on Sunday. But the more we can do it, the better. And the other thing is, even though I'm gonna just speak for myself, say a faith leader, the reality of it is, and I know Audrey, you already know this, that the reality of it is, if you have celebrities saying it, it really hits home to something. I mean, because I know you was at church not too long ago and, trying to contact a celebrity on that. And so if you had a Taylor Swift talking about organ donations, oh my God, it'll be so well received, or someone on that level, but as faith leaders, we try to do it from a standpoint of spirituality, what we believe, but I just know especially with young people, they just really look up to celebrities, and I wish we could get more of them make an announcement as relates to organ and tissue donations.
I also would like to add that I think education is key. Education is key. Religious education from esteemed panelists such as this to their congregations and respected communities. But also, I think what really opened my eyes, I already knew the religious education with regards to this topic, but I was hesitant prior to meeting Audrey. And I speak of my personal experience because there are a lot of assumptions that I had to make or assume, and primarily many of them were incorrect with regards to the process of donating. The ambiguities that and you fill in these blanks based on your lack of knowledge with regards to the actual factual process. of when an organ is donated, when it's taken, how it's taken, what determines your death, what determines the actual donation, and how does it work, and when does it work, and you end up being afraid of the unknown, and because you assume things, and oftentimes these assumptions are incorrect. But after meeting Audrey and being educated by her and her fellow team members from LifeCenter, I learned that almost everything they mentioned about the process goes hand in hand with my faith thus far. And the harvesting process is very respectful. It's very cognizant of the person, their faith, their family members. There's a process. It's not, you don't just, go in there with a minor injury and suddenly someone takes your organs and ends your life. It doesn't work that way. But you don't get to have those convictions or proper understandings until you're educated by those who are in the field, those who are actually of knowledge in that particular field. So from the religious perspective, myself and my fellow colleagues here would have the information likely to address this issue, but there's a whole nother part to this, which is the education on the process, which I think wonderful folks such as Audrey and I sincerely and deeply appreciate the amount of effort and collaboration you've done with myself and my Muslim community at the Islamic Center of Greater Cincinnati to bring that educational piece from the process perspective in addition to the religious teachings. Thank you.
Audrey, I really love this question because it brings to my mind some of the topics that my fellow panelists have already mentioned repeatedly, and that is just how difficult it is to make that decision about organ donation when tragedy strikes. When you have the opportunity to talk about that from a pulpit or in an adult Sunday school class in advance and get people thinking about it and asking their questions and concerns and having the opportunity to counsel with them in those environments long in advance, I think it really helps people make a decision and feel comfortable with it and already know what the wishes of their family members are before that happens. So 1,000 times yes, I think that's a great opportunity to talk about this in a sermon, in religious contexts, among our parishioners, our members, our adherents, so that they do understand what our faith's views are on that they get comfortable with those, and they can view themselves as potential organ donors and go down that path.
May I ask the question, Audrey? Is there an organ donation week or Sunday or whatever day so that it can rally all of us to say, okay, throughout this week, we're going to say something about organ donation?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there is. So November is Donor Sabbath month. And so during the month of November, we work with all of our faith-based organizations to really highlight organ and tissue donation. We have education tables at churches that we partner with to give their congregation the opportunity to ask us questions about organ and tissue donation. We can provide videos that can be played during your announcements. We also have cards that can be sent home. And I know during COVID, we had to get rid of all of that and do everything electronically. And so we have those. Also, April is Donate Life Month. And so we do a lot of partnering with our community partners and our faith-based organizations to highlight and educate our community on organ and tissue donation. So I will be calling every single one of you when that rolls around, because we would like to do some education in your specific congregations. We actually use what we call ambassadors, and we have a couple of them on tonight. Our ambassadors are folks who have been touched by either organ donation, so their loved one was an organ donor, or they were a living donor, as well as our recipients. And so they go out for us, they share their stories, about how their lives have been changed with organ and tissue donation. And so we can have some of those folks come speak at your congregation on our behalf. They've been fully vetted and trained. And so, yeah, it's just, we have everything you need at your fingertips. And so, like I said, I will be reaching out to each of you to help us spread the word in November. So yes, I truly appreciate the partnership that I have with our community, our faith-based leaders, and all of you guys just helping me in LifeCenter to spread the word about how people can help save, heal, and enhance lives through organ and tissue donation. One of the things that I did not share earlier is I actually got into this work when my brother was tragically killed by a drunk driver, and became an organ and tissue donor in his death. And like most of you were saying, you know, when you're hit with that tragedy, it's sobering, right? You know, you're trying to reckon with the fact that you just lost a loved one suddenly, and then somebody's talking to you about donating their organs, right? And so it's that walking that fine line. My brother, fortunately, was a registered donor, so when he got his driver's license, and you know, all my siblings, we are all registered donors, and so, you know, we already knew his wishes, and so we of course honor that, and he was able to save the lives of 6 individuals and touched so many others through tissue donation. And so I haven't walked through that. I am very passionate about it for 2 reasons. One is I've seen the benefit that donation can have through his recipients. And I also know that it is a good thing. His legacy lives on through the individuals that he was able to help. And so when I have something good, I want to share with my friends. And so, you know, I love what I do because I love sharing the good work that LifeCenter does. And, you know, I you know, growing up in an African actually community, and then moving to the United States, and you can imagine all the different misconceptions and every other thing you can think about organ and tissue donation, and then, you know, being able to walk through that process and really seeing that a lot of those were just not true, and so that is why I do what I do, and encourage others to help spread the word about organ and tissue donation. So any last word for us?
Well, I want to thank you, Audrey, again for sharing your story with us. Also, just reminded me that just on this past Sunday, I had a young man who's less than 20 years old, graduated from high school not too long ago, but had to get a new heart transplant, and wanted to be baptized. But because of his condition, we couldn't completely put him underwater, but we baptized him by putting water on him. And so again, you know, when things like that happens, people celebrate it. You know, oh, he's doing good, or someone gets a kidney transplant, you know, lupus and all that, or they celebrate it. But you know, then we just seem to forget about it when it's you know, when make a decision, should I be an organ donor? And so again, appreciate you sharing your story, and what it would encourage me now to do is share more with the congregation, or at least encourage the congregation now to really consider being a donor too.
Hey, Audrey, thank you so much. And blessings to all of you for all the wonderful work. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. As a hospice chaplain, for the last 20 years, my mission, vision, my passion everything is end of life care. So in that capacity, I travel around the world and I reach out to communities to spread the word of sacred work of hospice. So I will take the opportunity. I take the opportunity. I promise to talk more about the value of organ donation and giving and letting it go. So thank you so much again.
Thank you, Audrey. Personally, I owe you a great deal for educating me and my community with regards to the process of organ donation. And I look forward to continuing our collaboration and partnership in bringing more educational programs, awareness drives, and so forth, and increase the good work and effort towards supporting life in every way possible. Thank you.
So I just want to thank all of our panelists tonight. You all were amazing, as I suspected you would be. Thank you for putting up with my madness and just pushing through and being your authentic selves. Thank you for answering our questions and just really educating our community about organ, eye, and tissue donation. And so if you would like to register as an organ, eye, and tissue donor, you can check out our website at lifepassiton.org. You can register there. And